This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Many countries and empires have attempted to invade and conquer the United States since the 19th century, but none has ever succeeded. A decade before the outbreak of World War I, the German Empire of Kaiser Wilhelm II drafted a plan to invade the Continental US and force it into submission. Both countries were at peace, but the Kaiser wanted to stop Americans' Monroe Doctrine, which stipulated that the entire continent belonged to the US alone. President Teddy Roosevelt just defeated the Spanish in an unjust war, and Germany wanted a piece of the disputed colonies in America and the Pacific. 3 invasion plans would be drafted between 1897 and 1904 amidst crescent tensions in Europe and the determination of the US to not let any other power gain influence in the continent. Virtual private networks are your best ally to hide your data and protect sensitive information from prying third-party eyes when using a public hotspot. That's why NordVPN is essential to the work we do at Dark Seas, helping us to keep our team like a well-oiled naval machine. We know it sounds complex, but in reality, NordVPN is easy to install and use. All you need to do is download the software, enter your login credentials, and pick the location you wish to browse from. With NordVPN's 5,200 servers in 60 countries, the possibilities are endless. Don't miss out on the deal NordVPN has for all Dark Seas viewers. Visit nordvpn.com/darkseas or click the link in the description below and get a 73% discount off the 2-year plan, plus 4 additional months entirely for free. By obtaining this deal, you pay only $3.18 per month. For non-stop protection, use NordVPN at home, at work, and on the go, getting the best value for your hard-earned money. Protect your home network and online footprint with our sponsor, NordVPN. Germany rises. The German Empire was a latecomer to the so-called Empire Race, or the rampant colonization period of the mid-19th century. During the Napoleonic era, Germany as we know it today was divided into dozens of autonomous territories that belonged to the ancient and non-existent Holy Roman Empire. It wasn't until the aftermath of the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 and 1871 that all of Germany was unified under the throne of Kaiser Wilhelm II and masterminded by Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. But the Reich's consolidation came too late to take part in the colonization of Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. The Teutonic Empire was still an infant that wanted to be taken seriously by its neighbors. The Kaiser struggled to compete against its British and French counterparts in expanding his territories, and these shifting ideologies to acquire land overseas affected the rising German Empire. Bismarck's pragmatism to unify Germany abruptly turned into an intense nationalistic approach to turn the empire into a global superpower. During a Reichstag debate on December 6, 1897, German Foreign Secretary Bernhard von Bülow stated, quote, "In one word, we wish to throw no one into the shade, but we also demand our own place in the sun." Germany was going to fight its way to the top, whether France and the United Kingdom liked it or not. The Roosevelt Corollary. Germany acquired a few territories in the scramble for Africa, such as Clatschow Bay and Nuka Merun. Still, the empire did not have much luck in Asia and the Pacific, and Kaiser Wilhelm set his sights across the Atlantic. The main obstacle was another sleeping giant that, like Germany, was eager to become another global superpower. It was the United States of America, and the country did not intend to let any European nation rival its influence on the continent. But Germany had no choice. Great Britain and France had tightened their grip on Africa and Asia, and the waning Spanish Empire still controlled minor territories in America and the Philippines. In his article, The Plans Designed by the German Empire between 1897 and 1903 to Invade the United States, author Jorge Alvarez points out that, quote, "Germany's intercontinental expansion encountered a serious obstacle. The US was immersed in a similar dynamic, and based on both the Monroe Doctrine, with the new incorporation of the Roosevelt Corollary, and the more recent Manifest Destiny, they were unwilling to allow interference in the areas they considered for their own natural growth, which were Latin America and the Pacific. These American ideologies were rooted in the alleged racial supremacy of the Anglo-Saxon and Protestant man over the Native Americans and the Spanish Catholics. Under manifest destiny, the white man of this new nation was destined to expand civilization in territories where savages were ruled by primal customs or an inferior, such as Spanish Catholicism. To further increase American imperialistic ambitions in the continent, the Roosevelt Corollary of President Teddy Roosevelt established that the U.S. had a superior right over European countries to intervene in conflicts between Hispanic American and European countries. In other words, Roosevelt established that the U.S. was justified in exercising international police power to end disputes that the American government considered wrong or unfair. Although the German Empire and the U.S. were not at war, there was a conflict of interest, and the two nations both wanted to impose their rule in America. Alvarez continues, quote, "Berlin was cherishing the idea of establishing a naval base in the Caribbean that would counter the advantage that Americans were going to obtain when they finished the Panama Canal, as well as pursuing the Spanish territories of Asia and Oceania to add to those it already possessed in the so-called New German Guinea, which comprised the archipelagos Solomon and Marshall." To achieve his plans, Kaiser Wilhelm ordered his staff in 1897 to put in motion an invasion of the United States, with no intention to appropriate the country, but merely weaken it, and force its rulers to negotiate a reduction of their influence in the continent and the Pacific. The plan was simply referred to as the Winter Correspondence among the German staff. Invading the continental United States. The Kaiser chose 28-year-old Naval Lieutenant Eberhard von Manty to develop the invasion plan in 1897. If the operation was successful, Germany would earn a place among the empires that had colonized half the world. Manty worked closely with Alfred von Tirpitz, the Minister of the Navy, for two reasons. First, he had just returned from a trip to the U.S. months before and had better knowledge of the American landscape than any other officer. Second, as Minister of the Navy, he'd persuaded the Kaiser to provide him with additional funds and build a modern fleet that could compete against the other world powers. The objective was to attack the U.S. Atlantic Fleet on the west coast, quickly and violently, with a heavily armed German fleet squadron. Afterward, the German fleet would use its artillery to attack Norfolk Naval Shipyard, Newport News shipbuilding, and finish the U.S. naval resistance at Hampton Roads, Virginia. The American Navy would retain enough power to defend New York. Still, Manty believed that the previous attacks in Virginia and the Maine New Hampshire border would be enough to force them into negotiations. Unfortunately for the Kaiser, the plans never materialized. The long-range armored cruisers required for the operation were never assembled due to economic issues, and the Kaiser also decided to wait and see if Spain could defeat or at least bomb the Atlantic coast during the outbreak of the Spanish-American War of 1898. But this never happened, and instead, the U.S. took over the Spanish colonies of Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. The Kaiser was furious and ordered a revised second invasion plan. New plans. In March of 1899, Manty changed the plans to attack the American shipyards and opted to occupy New York City and Boston. Over 60 warships, 50 troop cargo ships, and more than 100,000 soldiers were required for the plan. The massive convoy had to cross the Atlantic in less than a month to keep the element of surprise and a steady flow of manpower. The German force would land at Cape Cod, while the Navy provided cover from the sea and destroyed Forts Hamilton and Tompkins. Nonetheless, General Alfred von Schlieffen argued that 100,000 men would not suffice to fully control the two cities, as New York alone had over 3 million inhabitants. Other generals, such as Admiral Otto von Diedrich, also claimed that there were simply not enough German ships to carry 100,000 men all the way to the United States. To make matters worse, the Kaiser decided that it was best to carry out the attacks from a base in Cuba. The problem was that the Germans did not have a base in the country and would have to seize the entire island from the American garrison established there. This would alert the whole country, and thus the plan was scratched. However, the Kaiser persisted in going forward with the invasion of the U.S. The third and final plan, overseen by veteran Vice Admiral Wilhelm von Buchsel, was drafted in 1902. Von Buchsel warned the Kaiser that the invasion could only be carried out if no other conflicts in Europe could compromise the German manpower. Von Tirpitz then gave secret orders to Lieutenant Hubert von Rabor-Paschwitz, a naval attaché at the German embassy in Washington, to scout landing areas at Cape Cod and Manomet Point. However, the invasion plans got more complicated when the US Navy began building more warships to patrol the continent. And to further increase the pressure on the German Navy, the British started building the new heavy dreadnought-type battleships, leaving the Germans unprepared for another global conflict. The signing of the Entente Cordiale in April of 1904 put an end to the American invasion for good, as Great Britain and France joined forces against the German threat. Fearing that a significant European conflict loomed on the horizon, the Kaiser decided to improve his military strength instead of wasting valuable resources on the invasion of the continental US, a feat that would have radically changed the course of history. The three invasion plans would remain secret until 1970, when they were discovered in the military archives of Freiburg. Thank you for watching our video. Please like and subscribe to our Dark Documentaries channels to find more exciting historical content. And let us know in the comments below what you think of the Monroe Doctrine and the manifest destiny employed by the United States.